The paddle rose in the air, and Sophia Martinez couldn't help but notice it was the same man who had been bidding on nearly everything tonight, his intense gaze seeming to follow her across the hotel ballroom rather than the items being auctioned. She adjusted her clipboard and smiled at the crowd gathered for the Children's Hospital Foundation charity auction, trying to ignore the flutter in her stomach every time she caught sight of him. This was her job, even if it was only part-time. During the week, she worked as a veterinary technician at a small animal clinic, but on weekends, she coordinated these events, matching her organizational skills with her desire to give back to the community. Tonight's auction was one of the biggest she had ever helped orchestrate, with over 200 guests and items ranging from vacation packages to original artwork. Sold to paddle number 47 for $8,000, the auctioneer announced, and Sophia checked her list, noting the winning bid for the wine country getaway. Paddle 47 belonged to the same dark-haired man in the impeccably tailored charcoal suit. That made it his fifth win of the evening, and they were only halfway through the program. Sophia's co-worker, Jennifer, an older woman who had been organizing charity events for decades, leaned close and whispered, "That's Alexander Thorne, made his fortune in commercial real estate development. He's been to a few of our events before, but I've never seen him bid like this." "Maybe he's just feeling generous tonight," Sophia replied, though she found it odd that someone would want both a romantic dinner cruise and a golf weekend and a spa package and a wine tasting trip. The items didn't exactly go together. Or maybe he's interested in something other than the auction items, Jennifer said with a knowing smile before walking away to coordinate with the catering staff. Sophia shook her head, dismissing the idea. She had learned long ago not to read into things that weren't there. At 26, she had been on enough disappointing dates to know that fairy tales rarely happened in real life. Besides, men like Alexander Thorne didn't notice women like her. She was practical, hardworking, and spent most of her days covered in dog hair and antiseptic. She had pulled her long brown hair into a simple updo tonight and wore a navy dress she had owned for 3 years. Nothing special. The auction continued, and Sophia moved through the crowd, ensuring everything ran smoothly. She checked on the silent auction tables along the perimeter, answered questions about the items, and made sure the registration desk had everything they needed. The ballroom of the Meridian Hotel was decorated with twinkling lights and elegant centerpieces, all donated by local businesses. Months of planning had gone into this single night, and the success of it meant funding for new medical equipment and programs for sick children. "Excuse me," a deep voice said behind her, and Sophia turned to find herself face to face with Alexander Thorne. Up close, he was even more striking than she had noticed from across the room. He stood well over 6 feet tall with broad shoulders that filled out his suit jacket perfectly. His dark hair was styled with casual precision, and his blue eyes were startlingly clear. A slight shadow of stubble lined his jaw, giving him a rugged edge that contrasted with his refined appearance. "Yes, how can I help you?" Sophia asked, clutching her clipboard a bit tighter. "I was wondering if you could tell me more about the upcoming lot. The cooking class with Chef Marie Laurent," he smiled, and it transformed his entire face from serious and intense to warm and approachable. Sophia glanced at her list. "Of course. It's a private 4-hour cooking class in her restaurant kitchen after hours. She'll teach you to prepare a full French meal, and you get to enjoy everything you cook. It includes wine pairings and her cookbook collection. Chef Laurent is nationally recognized and rarely offers private instruction." "Sounds perfect," he said, his gaze never leaving her face. "Do you cook?" The question caught her off guard. "I do, actually. Nothing fancy, but I enjoy it. It's relaxing after a long day." "What do you do during your long days?" Alexander asked, seeming genuinely interested. "I'm a vet tech at Riverside Animal Clinic," Sophia said. "I spend most of my time helping animals and their owners. It's rewarding but exhausting. And yet you're here on a Saturday night organizing this event. I like helping. These auctions fund really important programs." Sophia felt heat rising to her cheeks under his attention. "I should probably get back to work. The next item is coming up soon." "Of course. Thank you for the information," Alexander said, but he didn't move away immediately. "I'm Alexander, by the way, Sophia." She offered a polite smile. "Enjoy the rest of the evening." As she walked away, she could feel his eyes on her back. When the cooking class came up for auction 10 minutes later, Alexander bid $3,500 for it, far exceeding the estimated value. Sophia noticed Jennifer watching the exchange with raised eyebrows. The evening progressed successfully, and by the time the last item was sold, Sophia's feet ached in her heels, and her voice was hoarse from coordinating with volunteers and guests. The final tally exceeded their fundraising goal by $20,000, much of it thanks to Alexander's generous bidding. He had won 7 items total, spending over $40,000 in one night. As guests began to leave, Sophia worked with her team to ensure everything was properly documented and that winners received their certificates and information packets. She was double-checking a list when Alexander approached her again. "Congratulations on a successful evening," he said. "You and your team did an excellent job. Thank you, and thank you for your incredible generosity tonight. The Children's Hospital will benefit tremendously from contributions like yours." "It's a worthy cause," Alexander replied. He seemed to hesitate before continuing. "I was wondering if you might be free for coffee sometime. I'd love to hear more about your work with the charity auctions." Sophia's heart skipped, but doubt immediately crept in. Why would someone like him want to have coffee with her? She was nobody special, just someone who helped organize events a few times a month. "I'm not sure what I could tell you that you don't already know," she said carefully. "I'm sure you're being modest." His smile was genuine, not the practiced corporate smile she had seen him give other guests. "Just coffee, no pressure." Before she could talk herself out of it, Sophia found herself nodding. "Okay, coffee would be nice." They exchanged phone numbers, and Alexander left with a final warm smile that made Sophia's stomach flip. Jennifer appeared beside her almost immediately. "Did Alexander Thorne just ask you out?" she asked, her eyes wide. "It's just coffee. He probably wants to discuss donating to future events or something," Sophia said, trying to sound casual despite her racing pulse. "Honey, that man spent $40,000 tonight and could barely take his eyes off you. Trust me, he's not interested in discussing auction logistics." Jennifer patted her shoulder. "Just be yourself. You're wonderful, and it's about time you let yourself believe that." Sophia helped pack up supplies and finalize paperwork for another hour before finally heading home to her small one-bedroom apartment. As she kicked off her heels and unwound her hair, she couldn't stop replaying the conversation with Alexander in her mind. It felt surreal, like something that happened to other people but never to her. She fed her cat Biscuit, a orange tabby she had adopted from the clinic 2 years ago and changed into comfortable pajamas. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hi, Sophia, it's Alexander. I wanted to make sure you got home safely. Thank you again for a wonderful evening. Looking forward to that coffee." Sophia read the message 3 times, a smile spreading across her face despite her attempts to stay realistic. She typed back a simple response thanking him and confirming she had made it home fine. Then she collapsed onto her bed, staring at the ceiling and wondering what she had gotten herself into. The following Tuesday, Sophia met Alexander at a quiet coffee shop near the downtown area. She had changed out of her scrubs from work and into jeans and a soft gray sweater, keeping her look casual but put together. Her palms were slightly sweaty as she walked through the door, spotting Alexander already seated at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. "I hope you don't mind." "I took the liberty of ordering," he said as she approached. "Cappuccino with an extra shot, right? You mentioned it during the auction when you were talking to one of the volunteers." Sophia was stunned that he had remembered such a small detail. "That's perfect, thank you." They settled into conversation with surprising ease. Alexander asked about her work at the clinic, listening intently as she described the animals she had helped recently, including a golden retriever puppy who had eaten an entire sock and an elderly cat with diabetes whose owner had been struggling to afford treatment. He laughed at her stories and asked thoughtful follow-up questions that showed he was genuinely engaged. "What about you?" Sophia asked after realizing she had been talking for 20 minutes straight. "Jennifer mentioned you're in real estate development. What does that actually involve?" "Basically, I find properties with potential, figure out what they could become, and make it happen," Alexander explained. "It might be turning an old warehouse into apartments or developing a vacant lot into a shopping center. I like taking something neglected and giving it new purpose." "That sounds really fulfilling," Sophia said. "Like you're creating something lasting." "That's exactly how I think about it." Alexander's expression brightened. "Most people just see it as business and profit, which it is, but there's more to it than that. When we developed the Riverside project last year, we included affordable housing units and green space because the community needed it. Success isn't just about money." Sophia found herself drawn to his passion and the way he seemed to genuinely care about impact beyond profit margins. They talked for 2 hours, long after their coffee cups were empty, covering everything from their favorite books to their most embarrassing childhood memories. Alexander told her about growing up in Seattle with his younger sister, how he had worked construction during college to learn the industry from the ground up, and how he still sometimes missed the physical work of building things with his hands. "You want to walk for a bit?" Alexander suggested when they finally left the coffee shop. "It's a nice evening." They strolled through the downtown area as the sun began to set, casting everything in golden light. Sophia felt comfortable with him in a way she hadn't expected. He wasn't pretentious or distant. He held doors open, listened more than he talked, and had a dry sense of humor that made her laugh. "Can I be honest about something?" Alexander said as they paused near a fountain in the small plaza. "Of course," Sophia replied, slightly nervous about what he might say. "I've been to a dozen charity auctions over the years. I usually bid on 1 or 2 items and leave. But that night at your event, I couldn't stop watching you work. You were so organized and passionate, making sure everything was perfect. You remembered people's names, solved problems before anyone else noticed them, and you smiled at everyone like they truly mattered. I kept bidding on things just to have an excuse to stay longer and maybe catch your attention." Sophia's breath caught. "You spent $40,000 just to get my attention." "When you put it that way, it sounds slightly insane," Alexander admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. "But it all went to charity, and yes, I was hoping you might notice me. Clearly my strategy needed work since you seemed determined to stay professional all evening." "I noticed you," Sophia said quietly. "I just didn't think someone like you would be interested in someone like me." "Someone like me?" Alexander looked genuinely confused. "You're a millionaire real estate developer who probably dates models and socialites. I'm a vet tech who smells like dog shampoo half the time and organizes charity auctions for extra money because I want to help, not because I'm wealthy enough to write big checks." Alexander stepped closer, his expression serious. "Sophia, I've dated plenty of people who looked perfect on paper. None of them made me feel the way I felt watching you work that night. None of them had your kindness or your dedication or your genuine smile. Money doesn't make someone interesting or worth knowing. Character does. Heart does. You have both in abundance." Sophia felt tears prickling at her eyes, overwhelmed by his sincerity. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll let me take you to dinner. A real date, not just coffee." His voice was hopeful, almost vulnerable. "Yes," Sophia said, unable to fight the smile spreading across her face. "I'd really like that." Their first official date was that Friday at an intimate Italian restaurant Alexander insisted she would love. He picked her up from her apartment, and when she opened the door in a simple black dress, his expression made her feel like the most beautiful woman in the world. "You look stunning," he said, offering his arm. Dinner was perfect. They shared pasta and wine, trading stories and discovering more common ground than seemed possible. Alexander told her about his sister Emma, who was a teacher in Portland, and how she kept him grounded when business stress got overwhelming. Sophia talked about her parents who had retired to Arizona and how she missed them but loved her independence. "You ever think about what you want long term?" Alexander asked as they shared tiramisu for dessert. "Where you see yourself in 5 or 10 years?" Sophia considered the question. "I'd love to open my own animal rescue one day. Not just a clinic, but a full sanctuary for animals that need extra care or have trouble getting adopted. Senior pets, animals with medical issues, that kind of thing. It's probably just a dream, though. The funding alone would be enormous." "It's not just a dream if you're willing to work for it," Alexander said firmly. "Dreams become goals when you create a plan. Have you looked into what it would actually take?" "Some," Sophia admitted. "But every time I run the numbers, it feels impossible. I'd need property, staff, veterinary resources, funding for food and medical care. We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars just to start. What if you had help? What if someone believed in your vision enough to invest in it?" Sophia shook her head. "I couldn't accept something like that. It would need to be something I built myself, you know. Otherwise, it wouldn't really be mine." Alexander nodded thoughtfully. "I respect that, but don't give up on it. Sometimes opportunities appear when you least expect them." After dinner, Alexander drove her home but walked her to her door, his hand warm against the small of her back. At her doorstep, there was a moment of charged silence. "I had a wonderful time tonight," Sophia said, turning to face him. "So did I." Alexander reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "Can I see you again soon? I'd like that." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Their first kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise and possibility. When they finally parted, Sophia felt dizzy with happiness. Over the next few weeks, Sophia and Alexander fell into a pattern of seeing each other several times a week. He would stop by the clinic during her lunch break with food from her favorite deli. She would meet him after work, still in her scrubs, and they would walk through the park near his office building, talking about their days. He came to her apartment for movie nights where they would curl up on her small couch with biscuit between them, and she visited his downtown loft, a stunning space with floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture that somehow still felt warm and lived in. Sophia met Emma when his sister came to visit for a weekend. The petite blonde greeted Sophia with a huge hug. "Finally, someone good enough for my brother," Emma declared after spending 5 minutes talking to Sophia. "Do you know how many awful people he's dated?" This one woman literally asked if she could redecorate his entire loft before they had been together for a month. "Emma," Alexander warned, but he was smiling. "What? I'm just saying Sophia is clearly a keeper." Emma linked her arm through Sophia's. "Now tell me everything. How did you two meet?" Alexander's been annoyingly vague about the details. Sophia laughed and explained the charity auction, leaving out the part about Alexander bidding on everything. Emma seemed delighted by the whole story. "That's so romantic. He probably drove himself crazy working up the courage to talk to you." "I was not that bad," Alexander protested. "You called me 3 times that night asking for advice," Emma countered. "You were definitely that bad." Watching the siblings interact, seeing how much Alexander clearly adored his sister and how she teased him mercilessly with obvious affection, made Sophia fall for him even more. He was real and grounded despite his wealth and success. 2 months into their relationship, Alexander invited Sophia to a business gala his company was hosting. She initially hesitated, worried about fitting into his world, but he insisted he wanted her there. "These events are boring and stuffy. Having you there would actually make it enjoyable," he said, kissing her forehead. "Plus, I want to show off my brilliant, beautiful girlfriend." Sophia's heart warmed at hearing him call her his girlfriend so naturally. She bought a new dress for the occasion, a deep emerald green that made her brown eyes pop. When Alexander picked her up, his reaction was everything she hoped for. "You're going to be the most beautiful woman there," he said, his voice slightly rough. The gala was held at an exclusive country club, and Sophia felt out of her depth the moment they arrived. Women in designer gowns and men in tuxedos mingled with champagne glasses, discussing investments and vacation homes. Alexander kept his hand on her waist, introducing her to colleagues and clients with obvious pride. "This is Sophia, my girlfriend. She's a veterinary technician and organizes charity auctions that put our corporate events to shame." People were polite, but Sophia caught a few curious glances and whispered conversations. She tried not to let it bother her, focusing instead on Alexander's solid presence beside her. "Alexander, darling," a woman's voice called out, and they turned to see a striking brunette in a red dress approaching. She was model-tall with perfect features and an air of confidence that made Sophia instinctively straighten her posture. "Vanessa," Alexander said, his tone noticeably cooler. "I didn't know you were attending tonight. Daddy's company is one of your investors. Of course I'm here." Vanessa's gaze slid to Sophia, assessing her from head to toe. "And who is this?" "This is Sophia, my girlfriend," Alexander said firmly, pulling Sophia closer. "How sweet," Vanessa said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "I don't think we've seen you at any of these events before, Sophia. What do you do?" Before Sophia could answer, Alexander spoke up. "She works in veterinary medicine and volunteers her time coordinating charity events. She's accomplished and dedicated." "That's lovely," Vanessa said in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Well, I should mingle. Alexander, we should catch up later. I have a proposition your company might find interesting." After she walked away, Sophia felt tension in Alexander's shoulders. "Ex-girlfriend," she guessed. "For about 3 months over a year ago," Alexander confirmed. "It wasn't serious and it ended badly. She didn't handle the breakup well." "She's very beautiful," Sophia said quietly. Alexander turned to face her fully, cupping her face in his hands. "She's also shallow, materialistic, and only interested in what people can do for her. You're beautiful inside and out. There's no comparison, Sophia. Please don't doubt what we have because of people like her." Sophia nodded, trying to believe him, but doubt had planted itself in her mind. Throughout the rest of the evening, She couldn't help noticing how easily Alexander moved through this world of wealth and privilege. He belonged here in a way she never would. She watched him discuss business deals worth millions of dollars as casually as she discussed medication dosages for pets. On the drive home, Sophia was quiet. "Talk to me," Alexander said, glancing over at her. "You've been distant since we ran into Vanessa." "I just felt out of place tonight," Sophia admitted. "Everyone there was talking about things I don't understand, living lives I can't relate to. And seeing your ex-girlfriend, who looked like she stepped out of a magazine, made me realize how different our worlds are." Alexander pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her. "Sophia, listen to me. I don't care about any of that. Those people at the gala. Most of them are acquaintances, not friends. The conversations are superficial. That world can be lonely and empty. But with you, everything feels real and meaningful. You make me laugh. You challenge me to think about what really matters. You see me as just Alexander, not Alexander Thorne with a net worth and a business portfolio. But what if I can't be what you need?" Sophia's voice was small. "What if eventually you realize you want someone who fits into your lifestyle better?" "You are what I need," Alexander said intensely, taking her hands in his. "I've never been more certain of anything. Please don't let one uncomfortable evening make you doubt us." Sophia searched his eyes and found only sincerity and something deeper that made her breath catch. "I'm sorry. I'm just scared because this feels too good to be true." "It's not too good to be true. It's real and it's ours." He kissed her softly. "And I'm not going anywhere." They spent that night at Alexander's loft, wrapped up in each other, talking until the early morning hours about their fears and hopes. Alexander told her about the pressure he felt to constantly succeed, to prove he deserved the company he had built. Sophia shared her insecurities about never feeling quite good enough, always being the practical one while other people seemed to glide through life effortlessly. "We're both flawed and human," Alexander said as they lay together watching the city lights through his windows. "But together, we make sense." As spring turned into summer, their relationship deepened. Sophia brought Alexander to the clinic one Saturday when they had an adoption event, and she watched him get down on the floor to play with a litter of puppies without worrying about his expensive genes. He charmed the families looking for pets and ended up helping 3 animals find homes that day. "You're good at this," Sophia told him as they locked up afterward. "I like seeing you in your element," Alexander replied. "You light up when you're working with the animals. It's one of my favorite things about you." For Sophia's birthday in July, Alexander surprised her with a weekend trip to a cabin in the mountains. They hiked through forests, cooked meals together in the small kitchen, and spent evenings on the porch watching the sunset. It was simple and perfect. "I have something for you," Alexander said on the last evening as they sat together on the porch swing. He handed her a folder, and Sophia opened it curiously. Inside were property listings and business plans. "I've been doing some research," Alexander explained. "These are properties that could work for an animal sanctuary. This one has 30 acres and existing buildings that could be converted. This one is closer to the city, but has good access and infrastructure. I'm not trying to take over your dream, but I thought maybe I could help you start planning for it. As a business consultant, not as someone throwing money at you." Sophia stared at the documents, overwhelmed. "You did all this for me. I believe in you and your vision. I want to help however I can in whatever way you're comfortable with." Tears spilled down Sophia's cheeks as she threw her arms around his neck. "Thank you. This is the most thoughtful gift anyone has ever given me." "You're welcome," Alexander murmured against her hair. "I love you, Sophia. I think I have since the night of that auction when you were running around making sure everyone was happy and cared for. You have the biggest heart of anyone I've ever known." Sophia pulled back to look at him, her heart pounding. "I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes." They kissed as the sun set behind the mountains, and Sophia felt something click into place. This was real. This was lasting. This was worth fighting for. When they returned from their trip, Sophia started seriously researching what it would take to start her sanctuary. She met with lawyers about nonprofit status, talked to other rescue organizations about operations, and began creating a detailed business plan. Alexander helped when she asked, but respected her need to do most of it herself. "I'm so proud of you," he told her one night as she worked on grant applications at his dining table. "Watching you pursue this dream is incredible." "I couldn't do it without your support," Sophia said, reaching for his hand. "You believe in me even when I don't believe in myself." In August, another charity auction came up, this time for the local arts foundation. Sophia had agreed to help organize it before she had started dating Alexander. As the date approached, he seemed amused by the whole thing. "Should I bid on everything again?" he teased. "It worked pretty well for me last time. You've already got my attention," Sophia laughed. "Save your money for legitimate interests." "You're my legitimate interest," Alexander said, pulling her into his arms, "but I'll try to behave." The night of the auction, Alexander attended as a guest, looking devastating in a navy suit. Sophia found it much harder to focus on her job with him there, especially when he kept catching her eye and winking at her across the room. "Your boyfriend is very distracting," Jennifer commented with amusement. "He hasn't stopped watching you all night." "He's ridiculous," Sophia said, but she was smiling. Alexander did bid on a few items, including a photograph from a local artist that Sophia had mentioned she liked. When he won it, he brought it straight to her. "For your apartment," he said, "or our apartment if you ever decide you want to move in with me." Sophia's heart skipped. They hadn't discussed moving in together, though she had been spending more and more nights at his loft. "Is that an invitation?" "It's an open offer. No pressure, but I'd love to wake up next to you every morning," Alexander said seriously. "Think about it." Sophia did think about it constantly over the next few weeks. She loved her apartment, her independence, but she also loved Alexander and the life they could build together. Finally, one evening in early September, she brought it up. "I want to say yes to moving in with you, but I'm worried," she admitted as they cooked dinner together in his kitchen. "Worried about what?" Alexander set down the knife he had been using to chop vegetables and gave her his full attention. "That I'll lose myself, that I'll become dependent on you and forget how to stand on my own." Sophia struggled to articulate the fear that had been nagging at her. "You're so successful and established, and I'm still figuring things out. What if I become just your girlfriend instead of my own person?" Alexander considered her words carefully before responding. "I understand that fear, and I'm glad you told me. I never want you to feel like you're losing yourself in this relationship. What if we set some boundaries? You keep paying your own bills and managing your own finances. We split household responsibilities. You maintain your own space within the loft for your things, your hobbies. We're partners, not a merger where one person absorbs the other." "You've really thought about this," Sophia said, touched by his consideration. "Of course I have. Your independence is part of what I love about you. I don't want to change that. I just want to share space with you." Sophia smiled, feeling the fear ease. "Okay then. Yes, I'll move in with you." Alexander's face lit up and he picked her up, spinning her around the kitchen. "Really? Really?" Sophia confirmed, laughing at his enthusiasm. They spent the next month combining their lives. Sophia was relieved to discover that Alexander meant what he said about partnership. He made space in his closets and drawers, moved furniture to accommodate her belongings, and insisted on going shopping together to pick out new things that reflected both their tastes. Her apartment had been furnished mostly with second-hand finds and practical pieces, but Alexander encouraged her to choose things she actually loved. "Get what makes you happy," he said as they browsed a home goods store. "Money isn't an issue, and I want you to feel like the loft is truly your home." Sophia was still getting used to the way Alexander approached finances. He was generous but not flashy, practical but not cheap. He had explained his philosophy once. Money was a tool to create security and opportunity, not something to hoard or waste on meaningless luxuries. Living together brought new dimensions to their relationship. Sophia discovered that Alexander was terrible at remembering to buy groceries, but excellent at fixing broken things. He learned that she was grumpy before her first cup of coffee, but transformed into a morning person once properly caffeinated. They navigated small annoyances and discovered new joys, like lazy Sunday mornings reading in bed together and cooking elaborate meals, just because they could. In October, Sophia received news that a grant she had applied for had been approved. It wasn't enough to fund the entire sanctuary project, but it was a start. She called Alexander immediately, nearly crying with excitement. "That's incredible," he said, and she could hear the pride in his voice. "We need to celebrate. I'm taking you to dinner tonight anywhere you want." They celebrated at her favorite sushi restaurant, and Alexander raised his glass in a toast to Sophia and her dream of creating a sanctuary for animals who need extra love. "It's going to happen, and it's going to be amazing." "To dreams and the people who believe in them," Sophia added, clinking her glass against his. As fall progressed, Sophia continued working toward her sanctuary goals while maintaining her job at the clinic. Alexander's business was thriving, with several new development projects in the works. They supported each other through stressful days and celebrated victories together, big and small. In November, Alexander's company held its annual charity gala, and this time Sophia felt more prepared. She wore a stunning burgundy dress, and Alexander couldn't stop touching her, his hand always at her waist or fingers interlaced with hers. "You're much more relaxed this time," he observed as they danced. "I'm more secure in us," Sophia admitted, "and I care less about what other people think." "You love me and I love you. That's what matters." "That's definitely what matters," Alexander agreed, kissing her temple. They ran into Vanessa again, who looked less than pleased to see them still together. "Still dating the vet," she said to Alexander with barely concealed disdain. "I'm planning to date her for the rest of my life, actually," Alexander responded coolly. "Sophia is the best thing that's ever happened to me." Vanessa's expression soured further, and she walked away without another word. Sophia felt a surge of love for Alexander and how completely he stood by her. "My hero," she teased gently. "Always," Alexander replied seriously. As December approached, Sophia noticed Alexander becoming slightly secretive. He would have whispered phone conversations and quickly close his laptop when she walked into the room. She tried not to let it bother her, trusting that he would tell her whatever was going on when he was ready. Right before Christmas, Alexander asked her to accompany him to look at one of the properties from the research he had done for her sanctuary. "I know you're not ready to commit to anything yet, but the owner is considering selling, and I thought you might want to see it before making any decisions," he explained. They drove out to the property on a clear Saturday morning. The 30-acre lot was beautiful, with rolling fields, mature trees, and several buildings that could indeed be converted for animal housing and care facilities. Sophia walked around, imagining what it could become, feeling hope and excitement building in her chest. "It's perfect," she breathed. "I mean, It would need so much work, but the potential is incredible. I'm glad you think so, Alexander said, and there was something in his tone that made her look at him curiously. What are you not telling me? She asked. Alexander took her hands, looking nervous in a way she had never seen before. I bought it, the property. I closed on it last week. Sophia's mouth fell open. You what? Wait, let me explain before you get upset, Alexander said quickly. It's not a gift, it's an investment. I want to be your business partner in the sanctuary. I'll provide the initial capital and property, but you'll run everything. We'll set it up as a proper business with contracts and agreements. You'll have full operational control, and we'll split any future profits. Though realistically, nonprofits don't usually generate profits, but that's not the point. The point is that I believe in this dream, and I want to help make it happen while respecting your independence and vision. Sophia didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You bought an entire property for my dream. For our dream, Alexander corrected gently. If you'll let me be part of it. I know you wanted to do this yourself, and I respect that. But partnerships aren't about one person doing everything alone. They're about combining strengths and supporting each other. You have the vision, the knowledge, the heart. I have the capital and business experience. Together, we could create something really special. Sophia looked around at the property, then back at Alexander's hopeful face. You really want to do this with me, more than anything. And Sophia, there's something else. Alexander reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Sophia's breath stopped entirely. I love you, Alexander said, his voice strong despite the emotion in his eyes. I've loved you since I watched you coordinate that auction with such grace and dedication. You've made my life fuller and richer in ways that have nothing to do with money. You've taught me what really matters. I want to build this sanctuary with you. I want to build a life with you. Sophia Martinez, will you marry me? He opened the box to reveal a beautiful ring with a central diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the winter sunlight. It was elegant but not ostentatious, classic but unique. Exactly what she would have chosen. Tears streamed down Sophia's face as she nodded. Yes, yes, of course I'll marry you. Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her, holding her tight as she laughed and cried at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, Sophia looked at the property with new eyes. We're really going to do this, she said in wonder. Build the sanctuary together. We're really going to do this, Alexander confirmed. Build the sanctuary, build a marriage, build a life. They spent the rest of the day walking the property, making plans and dreaming together. Alexander had already commissioned preliminary architectural assessments and knew which buildings were structurally sound and which would need significant renovation. Sophia talked about the types of animals she wanted to focus on helping, the programs she wanted to implement, the community partnerships she hoped to establish. We should call it Second Chance's Sanctuary, Sophia suggested, because that's what we'll be giving these animals. I love it, Alexander said. Second Chance's Sanctuary it is. They told Emma first, video calling her that evening. Alexander's sister screamed with excitement when she saw the ring. Finally, Emma declared. I've been waiting for you to propose for months. Sophia, welcome to the family officially. You're the sister I always wanted. Sophia's parents were equally thrilled when she called them, her mother crying happy tears and her father telling Alexander he better take good care of his daughter. I will, sir. I promise, Alexander said solemnly. They decided on a June wedding, wanting time to plan but not wanting to wait too long. Sophia continued working at the clinic while beginning the massive project of developing the sanctuary. Alexander connected her with architects, contractors, and legal experts who could help establish the nonprofit properly. They worked together on evenings and weekends, turning the dream into concrete plans. "I can't believe this is real," Sophia said one night as they reviewed construction timelines. "A year ago, I was organizing auctions and going home alone to my cat. Now I'm engaged to you and starting an animal sanctuary." "Biscuit feels very betrayed that you called him just your cat," Alexander joked, nodding toward the orange tabby who had taken up residence on his favorite chair in the loft. "He's our cat now, and he wants joint custody recognized." Sophia laughed. "You're ridiculous, but I love you." "I love you too," Alexander said, pulling her close. "Thank you for taking a chance on the millionaire bidder who just wanted your attention. Thank you for seeing something in the part-time auction organizer who didn't think she was special enough to be noticed." As winter turned to spring, the sanctuary began taking shape. The main barn was renovated first, creating space for large animals and dogs. They hired a small staff including 2 vet techs Sophia had worked with at the clinic and an experienced animal behaviorist. Word spread about the sanctuary, and donations began coming in along with the grant funding. Local veterinarians offered to provide services at reduced rates. The community embraced the project. Sophia officially left her job at the clinic in April to focus on the sanctuary full-time, though it was bittersweet leaving colleagues she had worked with for years. "You're doing something incredible," her former boss told her. "We're proud of you, and we'll refer any cases to the sanctuary that need extra care." The sanctuary opened soft launch in early May, accepting its first residents. A 3-legged dog named Ranger, an elderly cat with kidney disease named Pearl, and a blind goat named Daisy became their inaugural animals. Sophia cried happy tears watching them settle into their new homes. Alexander surprised her by showing up with lunch on opening day, along with a photographer to document everything. "This is a historic moment," he said. "The beginning of Second Chance's sanctuary. It should be recorded." They took photos together in front of the newly hung sign. Alexander in his business casual clothes and Sophia in jeans, and a sanctuary t-shirt they had designed. They looked happy and in love and proud of what they had built together. As their wedding approached in June, Sophia felt overwhelmed by how much her life had changed in less than a year. She was marrying the love of her life, running an animal sanctuary that was already helping creatures in need, and building a future that exceeded any dream she had allowed herself to have. The wedding was held at a vineyard outside the city, an intimate ceremony with close friends and family. Emma served as maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Alexander's best friend from college, Marcus, stood as his best man. Sophia's parents beamed from the front row. When Sophia walked down the aisle in her simple but elegant lace gown, Alexander's expression made her feel like the most precious person in the world. They had written their own vows. "Sophia," Alexander began, his voice thick with emotion. "A year ago, I went to a charity auction and saw a woman who was making everyone around her feel important and cared for. I spent a ridiculous amount of money just to get your attention because I knew, somehow, that you were extraordinary. I was right. You've taught me that real wealth has nothing to do with money and everything to do with love, purpose, and connection. You've made me better, happier, and more complete. I promise to support your dreams, to be your partner in every sense, to laugh with you and cry with you, and to love you with everything I have for the rest of my life." Sophia was already crying as she spoke her vows. "Alexander, when you first approached me at that auction, I thought you were too good to be true. I thought someone like you couldn't possibly be interested in someone like me. You've spent the last year proving me wrong, showing me that I am worthy of love and support, and that differences in background don't matter when hearts align. You believed in my dream and helped make it reality. You've given me confidence and joy and a partnership that makes me stronger. I promise to love you fiercely, to stand beside you through challenges, to celebrate your successes, and to build a beautiful life with you. You are my best friend, my partner, and my home. There wasn't a dry eye in the audience as they exchanged rings and sealed their marriage with a kiss. The reception was filled with laughter, dancing, and heartfelt toasts. Emma embarrassed Alexander thoroughly with childhood stories. Sophia's father welcomed Alexander to the family with genuine warmth. "Take care of my little girl," he said, shaking Alexander's hand. "Always," Alexander promised. They honeymooned in Italy for 2 weeks, exploring Rome and Tuscany, eating incredible food and simply enjoying being newlyweds. They talked about the future, about expanding the sanctuary, about the possibility of children someday, about growing old together. "I want everything with you," Sophia told him as they watched the sunset over Florence. "The whole messy, beautiful, complicated journey of life." "You have me," Alexander replied, "for all of it, every moment." When they returned home, the sanctuary had grown to house 15 animals with more on the waiting list. Sophia threw herself into the work with renewed passion, and Alexander balanced his business responsibilities with increasing involvement in the sanctuary. He particularly loved the monthly open house events where they invited the community to visit and learn about the animals. "You're a natural with the kids," Sophia observed one Saturday as Alexander patiently explained to a group of children how to properly approach nervous animals. "They remind me why we're doing this," Alexander said. "Teaching empathy and compassion." In September, almost exactly a year after the proposal, Sophia got news that made her scream with excitement. A major national foundation had selected Second Chance's sanctuary for a significant grant that would allow them to expand operations substantially. "We can build the additional facilities we planned," Sophia told Alexander, waving the letter. "We can increase capacity, hire more staff, serve more animals." Alexander picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. "You did this. Your vision, your work." "We did this," Sophia corrected. "Together." That evening, as they sat on the porch of the sanctuary's small office building watching the animals settle in for the night, Sophia reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "You ever think about that auction?" she asked Alexander. "About how different things could have been if you hadn't decided to bid on everything?" "I think about it sometimes," Alexander admitted. "About how I almost chickened out of talking to you. I'm grateful every day that I didn't. That I took the risk of looking slightly crazy by bidding on things I didn't need." "Best $40,000 you ever spent," Sophia teased. "Without question," Alexander said seriously. "Though technically the best investment I ever made was buying this property. Look at what it's become." Sophia looked around at the sanctuary they had built, at the animals who had found safety and love here, at the man who had believed in her dream and made it reality. "I used to think fairy tales weren't real, that regular people like me didn't get extraordinary love stories. And now," Alexander prompted, "now I know that the best love stories aren't about perfection. They're about two people who choose each other every day, who build something meaningful together, who turn dreams into reality through partnership and commitment. Our story is better than any fairy tale because it's real." Alexander kissed her softly. "I love our story, and I love that we're still writing it together." Over the next few years, Second Chance's sanctuary became a recognized leader in animal rescue and rehabilitation. They expanded to care for over 50 animals at a time, developed educational programs for schools, and established a volunteer network of hundreds of community members. Sophia spoke at conferences and wrote articles about their approach to animal care. Alexander's business continued to thrive, but he scaled back his hours to spend more time at the sanctuary, eventually taking on an official role as the organization's chief financial officer. They celebrated their third anniversary with a quiet dinner at home, choosing to donate what they would have spent on an expensive restaurant to the sanctuary instead. "I have a surprise," Sophia said after they finished eating. "Another one." "You already surprised me with this incredible meal you cooked," Alexander replied. Sophia pulled out a small wrapped box and handed it to him. Alexander opened it curiously, finding a tiny pair of baby booties inside. His eyes widened. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" he asked, his voice catching. "I'm pregnant," Sophia confirmed, tears of joy sliding down her cheeks. "We're going to have a baby." Alexander was across the room in an instant, pulling her into his arms and holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "We're having a baby," he repeated in wonder. "Sophia, this is incredible." They spent that evening talking about the future, about how they would balance parenthood with the sanctuary, about what kind of parents they wanted to be. Alexander was so excited he could barely contain himself, already making plans to convert one of the loft's rooms into a nursery. "Our child is going to grow up surrounded by love and animals and purpose," Sophia said contentedly. "What more could we want for them?" "Nothing," Alexander agreed. "Absolutely nothing." Emma flew in the next week when they shared the news, announcing she was going to be the best aunt ever. Sophia's parents started planning visits. The sanctuary staff threw them a surprise baby shower months later, complete with animal-themed decorations and a cake shaped like a barn. Sophia continued working through most of her pregnancy, though Alexander insisted she reduce her hours and let staff handle the more physically demanding tasks. She appreciated his protectiveness even when it drove her slightly crazy. "I'm pregnant, not fragile," she reminded him when he tried to prevent her from lifting a bag of cat food. "I know, but humor me," Alexander replied. "I want to take care of you." Their daughter, Lily Grace Thorne, was born on a snowy February morning. She had Alexander's blue eyes and Sophia's dark hair, and a powerful set of lungs that announced her arrival to the entire maternity ward. Holding her for the first time, Sophia felt overwhelmed by love and gratitude for the life she had built. "She's perfect," Alexander whispered, gently touching Lily's tiny hand. "You're perfect. Our family is perfect." The first few months of parenthood were exhausting and wonderful. They took turns with night feedings, learned to function on minimal sleep, and fell more in love with their daughter every day. Lily came to the sanctuary often, sleeping in a carrier while Sophia worked or watching the animals with wide, curious eyes as she got older. "She's going to grow up thinking barns are normal offices and goats are regular coworkers," Alexander joked as they watched 8-month-old Lily giggle at Daisy the goat through a fence. "She's going to grow up knowing that compassion matters and that you can make a difference in the world," Sophia corrected. "That's what's important." As Lily grew, so did the sanctuary. They purchased an adjacent property, expanding to 80 acres. They added a rehabilitation center for wildlife and a fostering program for animals recovering from surgery or illness. The sanctuary employed 20 people and served hundreds of animals annually. Sophia published a book about their approach to animal rescue that became required reading in several veterinary programs. Alexander's company donated a portion of its profits to the sanctuary each year and encouraged employee volunteering. He had never been happier, splitting his time between business and the sanctuary, between board rooms and barns, between negotiations and bottle-feeding orphaned kittens. Who would have thought the millionaire real estate developer would end up mucking stalls? Marcus teased during a visit. Best career pivot I ever made, Alexander replied without hesitation. On their 5th anniversary, they stood together at the sanctuary during the annual open house, watching Lily toddle around showing visitors her favorite animals. The little girl had no fear, having grown up surrounded by creatures of all kinds. "You remember what you said to me the night I proposed?" Alexander asked, wrapping his arm around Sophia's waist. "About building the sanctuary, building a marriage, building a life." "I remember," Sophia said, leaning into him. "We did it, all of it, and it's more than I ever imagined." Sophia looked around at everything they had created together. The sanctuary was bustling with volunteers and visitors. Children were learning about animal care, and rescued creatures were living their best lives. Lily was being carefully supervised by Emma as she tried to pet a rabbit. Staff members moved efficiently through their tasks, clearly passionate about the work. It was noisy and chaotic and absolutely perfect. "I fell in love with you at a charity auction because you were kind and dedicated and saw people for who they really were," Alexander continued. "You changed my entire life without even knowing it." "You fell in love with me before I even noticed you," Sophia replied with a smile. "You bid on things you didn't want just to get my attention. Best decision I ever made." "Second best," Sophia corrected. "The best was actually talking to me instead of just bidding from across the room." Alexander laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Fair point. Though in my defense, you were very focused on your clipboard. I was trying to do my job. You were very distracting with all that intense staring." "I was captivated, still am." Sophia turned to face him fully, reaching up to touch his face. They had been together for over 6 years now, and she still felt that flutter in her stomach when he looked at her like she was his entire world. "I love you, Alexander Thorne. Thank you for seeing me when I didn't think I was worth seeing. Thank you for believing in my dreams and helping make them real. Thank you for being the best partner I could have asked for. I love you, Sophia Thorne. Thank you for letting me be part of your life, your dream, your heart. You've given me purpose beyond profit, love beyond measure, and a family I treasure more than anything." They kissed as the sun set over Second Chance's sanctuary, the sound of animals and laughter and life surrounding them. Lily noticed and came running over, demanding to be picked up and included in the hug. They scooped her up between them, the 3 of them wrapped in each other's arms. This was what mattered. Not the money Alexander had or the success of his business ventures. Not the accolades the sanctuary received or the recognition Sophia gained in her field. What mattered was this: love, family, purpose, and the commitment to make the world a little better together. From a chance meeting at a charity auction to building a life that exceeded both their dreams, Sophia and Alexander had created something extraordinary. They had proven that love could bridge different worlds, that partnership meant supporting each other's growth, and that the best investments were always the ones made with the heart. As they walked back to the office with Lily chattering happily about the animals she had seen, Sophia reflected on how much had changed since that night when she had been frantically coordinating an event, unaware that the man who kept bidding on everything was doing it all just to stay near her. She had been so focused on her clipboard and her responsibilities that she almost missed the love of her life standing right in front of her. "What are you thinking about?" Alexander asked, noticing her thoughtful expression. "Just that I'm grateful I finally looked up from my clipboard," Sophia said with a smile. "Me too," Alexander replied, squeezing her hand. "Though I would have kept bidding on things until you noticed me eventually. You would have gone bankrupt trying to get my attention. Absolutely." You were worth any price." Sophia laughed, her heart full of joy and contentment. They had built something beautiful together, brick by brick, dream by dream, day by day. And they would keep building it for the rest of their lives. Years later, when people asked Sophia about how she and Alexander met, she would tell them about the charity auction and the mysterious bidder who seemed determined to win everything. She would talk about how she had been so focused on doing her job well that she almost missed the incredible man who was trying so hard to get her attention. And she would always end the story the same way. Sometimes the best things in life happen when you're brave enough to look up from what you think you should be doing and see what's actually right in front of you. Alexander's version of the story was simpler. He saw a woman who was everything he had been looking for without knowing it. He took a chance, and she gave him everything he never knew he needed: love, partnership, purpose, and a life richer than any fortune could buy. Together, they created their happily ever after, one day, one decision, one act of love at a time. And as they watched Lily grow up surrounded by rescued animals and unconditional love, they knew they were giving their daughter the greatest gift of all. A living example of what it meant to build a life of meaning, compassion, and joy. The sanctuary continued to thrive, touching countless lives, both animal and human. Sophia and Alexander grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They added 2 more children to their family, a son named Noah and another daughter named Grace. All 3 children grew up learning that success meant making a difference, that wealth was measured in love and purpose, and that the best life was one lived in service to something greater than yourself. And it all started with a charity auction, a man who bid on things he didn't need, and a woman who almost missed seeing that she was exactly what he wanted most. It started with taking chances and believing in possibility. It started with love, and it continued with commitment, partnership, and the daily choice to build something beautiful together. That was their story. That was their legacy. And it was absolutely perfect.